at her. She'll never manage that.
That's enough. Leave her be.
The main street of Willow Creek stretched under the pale morning sun, dust curling with every footstep. She wrapped her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders, hiding the tremble of her hands. The wooden boards of the boardwalk creaked beneath her boots as she moved past the general store. "Morning, Fatso," a boy called from the steps, grinning. She lowered her gaze and whispered, "Good morning," voice barely audible. Another voice laughed behind the counter. "Don't fall over yourself there, Martha." She flinched, pressing her shawl closer. I'm just going to the well," she said softly, forcing a step forward. A group of girls giggled as she passed. "Bet she can't even carry the water," one sneered. "Maybe she'll tip it all over," another added. She kept walking, each word twisting her stomach. Her hands clenched around the bucket handle. The sheriff stood near the saloon door, hat low, eyes cast downward, pretending he did not notice. "Watch it there!" a man called from across the street. "Wouldn't want you breaking the boards with all that weight." She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir," she murmured. A small boy tripped over her skirt, laughing, and she stumbled, catching herself on the railing. The town erupted with low chuckles. "Careful, Fatso! Don't hurt the floorboards!" someone jeered. She paused, took a deep breath, and steadied herself. Her boots scraped along the boards as she continued. The shawl slipped from her shoulder once, and she caught it quickly, pressing it to her chest like a shield. "Need a hand?" a woman asked, loud enough for the surrounding crowd to hear. The words dripped with mockery. I can manage," she said, voice shaking. Her eyes flicked to the horizon, pretending to see work in the distance. "Sure you can," another woman said, wagging a finger. "Just don't fall into the mud. That'd be a sight." She ignored them, moving faster now, the bucket heavy in her hands. Dust clung to her dress, marking her as she walked. She wished the ground would swallow her whole, but she kept going. "Look, she's sweating already," a man laughed, his spurs clinking. Her face burned. She bent slightly to keep her balance, every step measured, silent tears threatening. "Almost there," she whispered to herself, clutching the shawl. A little girl peeked from behind a post. "Mama, why do they say such mean things?" she asked, eyes wide. "Don't mind them," her mother replied. "They just don't understand." She felt a pang in her chest, hearing a softer voice amidst the laughter. Still, she moved on, past the saloon, past the butcher, past the blacksmith's hammering that clanged in time with her heartbeat. One of the boys ran ahead and snickered. "Hey, watch this!" He yanked at her skirt from behind. She stumbled forward, the bucket tipping. Water spilled onto the dusty street, splashing boots and boards alike. The crowd's laughter rose, sharp and cruel. "Careful now, you'll drown us all!" a man shouted. I'm sorry," she cried, bending to scoop what she could. Her fingers shook. The shawl slipped again, tangled in her arm. She clutched it tighter, pressing it against her chest, as though it could protect her from the stares, the whispers, the smirks. "Couldn't even hold a bucket, could she?" a woman sneered. The children's laughter rang out, echoing in the empty spaces of her confidence. She felt her chest tighten, every breath shallow, and she froze for a moment, wishing she could vanish. Then, from across the street, she noticed him. A quiet figure leaning against the fence at the edge of town. His hat shaded his eyes, but she could see his shoulders, steady and relaxed. He didn't laugh, didn't point, didn't whisper. He simply watched, silent and still. Her lips parted slightly, the weight of shame pressing against her chest. And for a moment she forgot the crowd, the mocking, the sting of every cruel word. He said nothing, yet his presence made her feel something she had not in years, a spark of being seen without judgment. She straightened slowly, her fingers tightening on the shawl, and in that glance a small seed of courage took root. The boys who had tripped her ran off, still laughing, but she no longer felt entirely alone. Dust swirled around her boots, sunlight glinting off the spilled water. She raised her head, and the cowboy's gaze held hers for a heartbeat longer than expected. The town watched, some curious, some scornful, but she only saw him. And in that quiet, unreadable expression, she felt the tiniest flicker of hope. The town square bustled with energy, lanterns swaying as vendors shouted their wares. Children ran between stalls, laughter ringing in the dusty air, while women fanned themselves and gossiped. She lingered near the edge, shawl wrapped tight, keeping to the shadows. "Come on, Martha," a man called from the center. "We need help with this crate." She hesitated, voice trembling. I can try," she whispered. The crate was heavier than expected. Her fingers slipped on the rough wood, and a boy nearby snickered. "Careful, don't drop it on us! I'm holding it," she said, cheeks burning. "Not so fast," a woman said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "You'd crush us all, fatso." She flinched, gripping the crate tighter, heart pounding. A man stepped forward and shoved her gently aside. "Move it, you're in the way again," he muttered. Her knees hit the ground with a dull thud and the crate wobbled, tipping just enough to spill a few items onto the cobblestones. Laughter erupted like a wave rolling over her. "Look at her!" a woman shouted. "Can't even lift a box without falling." "Should have known better," another added, pointing fingers. She stayed on her knees, hands pressed to the crate, tears stinging her eyes. Her shawl slipped off one shoulder, dragging in the dirt. She clutched it desperately, feeling small and exposed under every gaze. "Need a hand?" someone asked, smirking. No, I can manage," she whispered, voice shaking. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Children mimicked her stumble, hopping and pointing. And even adults could not hide their amusement. "Fatso's making the town proud again," a man called, tipping his hat. She lowered her head, wishing the ground would open beneath her feet. The shame was suffocating. Every muscle in her body ached from the effort to appear composed, from the desire to vanish entirely. From the edge of the square, she spotted him, the quiet cowboy. Luke leaned against a post, hands resting on the brim of his hat. He did not laugh. His eyes followed the cruelty, steady and calm, as if he measured it, weighed it, and found it wanting. She felt a spark of relief, fleeting but present. He had not joined in. He had not whispered jokes or smirked. He simply watched. "Get up, Martha," a woman called. "Don't waste the town's time crawling about." Her knees scraped the ground, wood splintering under her palms. I'm sorry," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're always sorry," the man said, tone sharp. "Just move along, won't you?" She did, dragging herself upright, crate in arms again, trembling under the weight and the stairs. Her boots kicked up dust as she hurried down the street, avoiding eyes, avoiding voices, avoiding the mocking tone that seemed to follow her like a shadow. The cowboy's gaze remained fixed on her until she disappeared around the corner. Then he shifted slightly, a soft sigh escaping his lips. By the time she reached her cabin, the sun had dipped lower, shadows stretching across the boards. Her shawl had fallen completely, dragged through the dirt behind her. She stumbled inside, tears freely streaming, soaking the fabric. "Please! Please leave me be," she whispered, voice raw. Her shoulders shook as she sank onto the floor, clutching the shawl to her chest. The small cabin felt impossibly tight, the walls pressing in like the world itself. Outside, laughter still echoed faintly from the square. Every word, every glance replayed in her mind. She pressed her face to the worn wood of the wall, hoping it could absorb the weight of the humiliation. "I don't deserve this," she murmured, cheeks wet with tears. "I've done nothing to deserve this." Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled, and she felt as though the world had chosen to hate her entirely, leaving no corner of safety, no refuge, no kindness at all. The small flicker of hope she had felt earlier that morning now seemed distant, almost imaginary. A soft knock at the door startled her. She flinched, heart lurching. "Who?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Evening," a calm, steady voice called. "It's Luke. May I come in?" She froze, shawl tightening in her grip, eyes wide. The world outside had been cruel and unrelenting, but this voice, the quiet, unassuming voice, brought an unfamiliar warmth. It did not demand or mock. It did not judge. "Luke," she whispered, barely daring to hope. "Yes," he said, voice gentle. "I saw what happened. Thought you might need a friend tonight." She swallowed hard, chest tight. The tears continued to fall, but something small and fragile stirred within her. The cowboy's presence, quiet and steady, offered a glimmer of safety she had not felt in years. She let him enter, closing the door slowly behind him. The lantern cast soft shadows across the room, warming the worn wood boards and the simple furnishings. Outside, the town's cruel laughter faded into the distance. Inside, for the first time in days, she felt someone might see her without contempt. She opened the door cautiously, the wood creaking beneath her hand. Luke stood there, hat in hand, boots dusted from the road. His eyes held calm concern, steady and unwavering. "You all right?" he asked quietly. I'm fine," she whispered, pulling her shawl tighter. Her cheeks burned and she avoided his gaze. "Don't try to lie," he said softly. "You're shaking." "Let me see that step," she blinked, confused. "Step? The porch? Looks like it's splintered." "I can fix it for you. I can manage," she murmured, but he shook his head. "Not tonight," he replied firmly. "Let me help." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Luke crouched, examining the boards. "These are weak. One more weight and they'd give. I should have—" she started, voice faltering. "Shh," he said. "No blame. Just repair." His hands moved skillfully, hammer tapping softly, nails sliding into wood. She watched, still uncertain, still wary of trust. Why help me?" she asked quietly. He paused, looking up with steady brown eyes. "Because no one deserves to be mocked for trying." Her throat tightened. Words like that felt foreign, almost impossible. I've never heard that before," she admitted. Luke nodded, returning to the work. "Then hear it now. You deserve respect, like anyone else." She swallowed hard, wrapping her shawl around herself, unsure how to respond. He finished the step, brushing sawdust from the boards. "Better?" he asked, voice gentle. "Yes," she whispered. The simplest word carried weight. She felt something unfamiliar, a small thread of relief. "Good," he said, standing and dusting off his hands. "Now I've got something else for you." He reached into a sack slung over his shoulder and pulled out a small bundle of food. "Leftovers from the ranch, warm, thought you might need it. I can't accept this," she murmured, gaze dropping. "You can, and you should. Don't hide from help because others are cruel." His voice was patient, calm, unshakable. She hesitated, then took the bundle. "Thank you," she said softly, barely above a whisper. Luke nodded, tipping his hat. "Take care of yourself, Martha." She blinked, confusion and gratitude mingling in her chest. I will," she said. He gave a small nod and walked down the dusty lane, boots crunching on loose gravel. She watched until he disappeared around the corner, a strange warmth lingering in the small cabin behind her. That night, she sat by the window, unwrapping the food slowly, the lantern casting soft shadows across her face. She took small bites, savoring the warmth, the care that went unnoticed in the harshness of the town. For a moment, she let herself feel safe. Morning arrived with the sun spilling gold across the main street. She walked carefully to the well, carrying her water bucket, shawl snug around her shoulders. Whispers followed, sharp and eager. "Did you see him at her house?" a woman called to another. "Luke? The cowboy? Visiting Fatso?" She brought him in. Wonder what she said to him. Her stomach tightened, shame mixing with the lingering warmth from yesterday. She tried to ignore the voices, but each step felt heavier. "He didn't laugh?" a man muttered nearby. "He actually spoke to her." "Seems like it," a boy said. "Strange, ain't it?" She kept her head down, finishing her chores quickly. Each whisper struck like a thorn, but she held the small bundle of courage from Luke's words close to her heart. Her shawl dragged lightly on the boards, dust rising with each step. The town's gossip followed, growing in volume. Reaching every corner, "She's hiding at home now. Waiting for him to come back," someone whispered. "Bet she thinks she's safe," another laughed. She clenched the bundle in her hand, wishing the world could be quieter, gentler, even for just a moment. She had glimpsed kindness, a rare thing in Willow Creek, and she would hold on to it as tightly as her shawl. Luke's quiet presence replayed in her mind. No laughter, no mockery, only steady, calm care. It was a small gift, but it carried weight she could feel in her chest. The town, oblivious to the quiet shift within her, continued plotting, their voices low and scheming. She could feel it. Whispers forming plans to push her out, to reclaim their mockery as control. She swallowed, dust on her boots, sunlight catching the lanterns in the town square. She tightened her grip on her shawl and lifted her head slightly, determined not to let the cruelty break her entirely. Luke's kindness had given her a thread of hope, and for the first time, She believed she could survive tomorrow. The whispers would not be the last. The town's plotting had begun. The morning sun barely warmed the dusty streets of Willow Creek. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, feeling the weight of every gaze. Whispers followed her as she carried baskets from the general store, feet scraping boards. "Look who's trying to sneak through without attention," a woman called, voice sharp. I'm just passing," she murmured, lowering her gaze. "Trying to catch him, are you?" Another woman asked, pointing toward the distant hills. "The cowboy, I mean." She stiffened, cheeks burning, and quickened her steps. "Careful there," a man jeered from the saloon steps. "Don't fall over your own shadow." Her hands trembled around the basket handles. Each step felt heavier, every laugh slicing deeper into her chest. She lowered her eyes, willing herself to be invisible. "Good morning, Miss Martha," the shopkeeper called, then frowned. "Oh, never mind," she froze. "Please, I just need some bread," she said softly. "I'm sorry, but we're close to—" "Some customers," he said, voice clipped. She nodded silently, biting her lip, and left empty-handed. Dust rose with her boots as she walked past the blacksmith, past the horses, past the men who chuckled openly at her figure. "Ha! She waddles like a calf," one called. "She's bigger than a sack of flour," another laughed, her stomach churned. She clenched the shawl tighter, forcing herself to keep walking, forcing herself not to fall apart right there. Luke leaned against a fence across the street, observing quietly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes followed her every movement. He saw the flinch when a man laughed too loudly, the quick glance over her shoulder at every whisper. "Even the wind seems to hate her," one of the men snorted. She kept her head down, willing her boots to move faster. Each word, each stare drew her closer to exhaustion. Her spirit felt thinner than the worn cloth wrapped around her shoulders. "Watch it!" a boy called as she passed. "Don't trip over yourself. I'm fine," she said, voice barely audible. The sun sank lower, shadows stretching across the square, and she headed home, arms aching from the baskets she carried with trembling hands. The wind shifted suddenly stronger, carrying loose dust across the streets and into her eyes. She shivered, pulling her shawl closer. By the time she reached the well, dark clouds had gathered. The first drops of rain fell, cold against her neck. She filled her bucket, but the wind swirled violently, tugging at her dress and tossing the water. "Careful now," she whispered to herself, gripping the bucket. A gust stronger than the last pushed it from her hands. Water spilled across the boards and her dress, soaking her through. She gasped, arms trembling, toes slipping on the wet planks. "Oh, no," she whispered, panic and shame rising. Her dress clung to her, cold and heavy. She stood still, shaking, eyes downcast, feeling utterly defeated. Thunder rolled in the distance, rattling the boards beneath her feet. The town was gone, its voices replaced by the roar of the storm. Yet the weight of humiliation remained as if carried by the wind itself. She sank onto the edge of the porch, shoulders hunched, wrapping the wet shawl around her arms. Her lips trembled, and tears mingled with the rain streaking her cheeks. You're all alone," she murmured, voice broken. "Why does it have to be this way?" Lightning split the sky, and a shadow moved in the flash. Luke stepped forward from the road, boots muddy, coat draped over his arm. His expression was calm, unwavering. "Luke," she whispered, fear and relief warring in her chest. "Here," he said quietly, draping his coat over her shoulders. The fabric was dry, warm, and grounding. "You'll be safe. Thank you," she managed, voice shaking. "You've been carrying more than water today," he said softly. "Let me help you with that." She blinked, overwhelmed by the gesture, the presence, the calm steadiness that refused to judge her. Her hands loosened, shawl slipping slightly beneath the coat, but she felt some small measure of comfort. "Storms pass," he said quietly, "and so do harsh words. You're stronger than you think," her lips trembled. I've never heard that before," she admitted. Luke nodded, shifting the coat so it rested fully over her shoulders. "Then hear it now. You deserve respect. You deserve care." The wind howled around them, trees bending under the gusts, dust swirling in the lantern light. Yet in that moment, with Luke's quiet voice beside her, she felt a thread of hope threading through her chest. She leaned slightly against him, letting the warmth seep through. body shivering from the rain but heart steadied by his presence. The storm continued to rage, lightning illuminating the darkened streets, but she no longer felt completely alone. For the first time in days, she believed that kindness could exist in Willow Creek. And as the rain fell, washing the dust and grime from the square, Luke's coat held her not just from the storm, but from the cruelty that had pressed in from every side. For a moment, the world seemed quieter. And in that silence, she drew a slow breath, feeling the first flicker of courage in her chest. Luke guided her through the mud-slick road, coat wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Rain poured from the sky in sheets, soaking boots and skirts alike. "You can't go home like this," he said firmly, voice carrying over the storm. "You'll catch your death. I should try," she murmured, shivering, toes sinking into the mud. "No," he interrupted, placing a hand on her elbow. "You'll stay at my ranch tonight." "No argument," her lips trembled. I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," he said, eyes calm. "Come on." The ranch gates loomed ahead, lanterns swaying in the wind. The smell of wet hay and horses filled the air. Ranch hands paused in their chores, glancing at the drenched visitor. "Luke." "Bringing in a soaked woman?" One muttered, brow raised. "Mind your business," Luke said firmly. "This is my place, my rules. Nobody speaks unless spoken to." A few exchanged uncertain looks, whispers fading as they returned to their work. She followed Luke into the barn, boots squishing in the straw. Warmth wrapped around her, scented with hay and leather. Lantern light flickered across sturdy beams, casting shadows that felt safe, not threatening. "This way," Luke said, leading her to a small room at the back. Wooden walls were simple but solid, a single table, a few chairs, and a bed pushed into a corner. He set a plate of food before her, steam curling in the lamplight. "Eat," he said gently. "You need it." "The storm's not letting up tonight, and you'll be warm here," she hesitated, hands hovering over the plate. I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You're not a burden," he said, voice soft but steady. "Sit down, eat, nobody's judging here." She lowered herself into the chair, hands shaking as she took the fork. Each bite was cautious at first, small, almost apologetic. Luke watched quietly, allowing her space. "Better?" he asked after a moment, nodding to her nearly empty plate. "Yes," she whispered, cheeks pinking. For the first time in what felt like years, she ate without fear of laughter, without whispers, trailing each movement. The door opened softly, and a young ranch hand stepped in, holding a folded blanket. "Evening," he said quietly. "Name's Eli. Thought you might need this." She blinked, staring at the warm fabric. Thank you," she murmured. "No one laughs here," he added gently. "Not on my watch." Tears pricked her eyes. "Nobody?" "Nobody," he said, voice firm but kind. "You're safe tonight." She folded the blanket around her shoulders, feeling the warmth seep through the dampness of her soaked dress. Her body shivered less, and her heart felt lighter. The storm raged outside, rain drumming against the roof, lightning illuminating the barn through small windows. She listened to it all, letting the sound fill the space rather than fear it. The wind howled, but inside she felt protected. Luke moved quietly, brushing hay from a chair before sitting across from her. "You're stronger than you realize," he said softly. "Even when the town is cruel, you carry on. That matters more than you know. I don't feel strong," she admitted, voice breaking slightly. "You are," he insisted. "You're still standing. You're still breathing. That's strength." She blinked, pressing her shawl tighter around herself, warmth from the blanket and the lantern light soothing her damp skin. Her shoulders, so often hunched in shame, eased a fraction. "Tomorrow," Luke began, pausing to choose his words. "Tomorrow, when the storm clears, you'll have a choice. You can go home, or stay. Work on the ranch if you like." She looked up, startled. "Work?" "Yes," he said, voice calm. "If you want. You'd be welcome. The horses need feeding. The chores need doing. You'd be part of it. If you want." Her fingers clenched the blanket, heart pounding in a mix of fear and hope. I don't know." "You'll decide," he said gently. "No pressure." The barn fell into quiet again, the storm outside still thrashing, but inside, peace lingered. Eli stacked some clean towels and stepped back toward the door. "Sleep," he whispered. "The storm will pass. You'll be safe here." She nodded, eyes heavy. the warmth of the blanket and the room wrapped around her like a shield. She lowered herself onto the bed, curling up, the dry wood beneath her and the soft straw cushioning her body. "Thank you," she whispered, voice small but sincere. "You're welcome," Luke said softly, tipping his hat before stepping back. "Get some rest. We'll see what the morning brings." The lantern light flickered across the walls as she closed her eyes. Outside, thunder rumbled, rain spattering against the roof, but she no longer flinched. Her breath slowed, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. She thought of the town square, of the mocking faces, of the whispers and cruel words that had followed her like shadows. But those thoughts faded, replaced by the quiet strength of this place. The warmth of food, blankets, and steady voices. Eli's gentle words echoed in her mind. Nobody laughs here, and Luke's calm, unwavering presence anchored her, letting her believe, if only for a moment, that kindness could exist in the world. The storm continued through the night, lightning flashing and wind rattling boards, but she slept, cradled by warmth, comforted by the quiet knowledge that someone believed in her. For the first time, she felt that she might survive Willow Creek, not just endure it, and when morning light crept through the small windows, she would be ready to face a choice, one that could change her life entirely. The sun rose over the ranch, painting the wooden fences gold and casting long shadows across the muddy yard. She stepped outside, the morning air crisp against her cheeks, and wrapped the damp shawl around her shoulders. "Good morning," Luke called from the barn, voice calm and steady. "Ready to start?" She nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. I think so. "Good," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We'll start small. Chickens first!" The clucking birds scattered at her approach. She bent carefully, scattering feed into the trough. "Like this?" she asked, fingers brushing the straw. "Exactly," Luke said, watching her movements. Slowly, steadily. "Don't rush. They'll trust you if you're patient." She glanced up at him. They trust me." "They can," he replied softly. "If you give them a reason to." She smiled faintly. A sound so quiet it seemed almost foreign, but Luke heard it and nodded. "Improving. Now the linens," he said, gesturing toward the drying line near the porch. "Fold carefully, like you would a gift for someone you care about." She picked up the damp fabric, fingers fumbling at first. I've never done this properly," she admitted. "That's fine," Luke said. "Care is more important than perfection." Hours passed in quiet rhythm, sweeping the porch, gathering eggs, refilling water troughs. Her muscles ached from unfamiliar work, but each task brought a strange lightness, a sense that she belonged somewhere. "You're doing well," Luke said later, handing her a curry comb. "Time to meet the horses." She froze at the sight of the animals, massive and unfamiliar. I don't know if I can," she whispered. "You can," he said firmly. "Just walk beside them, keep your palms open. Let them see you're not afraid." Her hands shook as she approached a bay horse, brushing the coarse mane slowly. It's softer than I imagined," she murmured, voice awed. Luke stayed close, guiding her movements. "That's it. Feel their weight, their rhythm. They'll respond if you're calm." She laughed softly, brushing a stubborn strand of mane from its eye. Luke's smile widened. "There it is," he said. "That sound, it suits you." The horses responded to her gentle touch, leaning into her hands, stepping in rhythm beside her. For the first time she felt trust, not just from them, but inside herself. "Careful with the younger ones," Luke warned. "They can sense fear. I'm not afraid," she whispered, though her voice wavered. "You're learning," he said. "That's enough." Eli approached from the barn, carrying a small pail of water. "You're doing good," he said, voice kind. "Horses like you. Even Martha notices." "Martha?" she asked, glancing at the older woman in the kitchen doorway. "The cook," Eli said. "She's tough but fair. Likes it when folks try." Inside, the warm smell of stew and fresh bread filled the room. Martha set a plate before her, eyes soft as she spoke. "Knit, eat, you've earned it." She hesitated, then sank into the chair, fingers brushing the edge of the plate. For the first time in a long while, she ate without shame, without imagining whispers or laughter trailing her movements. "See?" Luke said softly. "No one here will judge you for being you." She swallowed hard. "It feels strange, but Good. Eli handed her a towel. You're part of this now. You help, you're seen. That counts. The hours passed, chores blending into quiet laughter, gentle guidance, and small successes. She folded linens neatly, brushed horses' coats until they gleamed, and even swept the barn without incident. Each accomplishment felt like a quiet victory, stitched together by Luke's unwavering patience. Not bad for a first full day, he said, leaning against the fence as the sun sank low. You're learning to breathe again. She smiled faintly, chest lighter than it had been in years. I think I am, she whispered, but the peace did not last. Dust and heat carried distant voices to the ranch gate, sharp and loud enough to make her chest tighten. Did you hear? She's hiding at Luke's place. She thinks she can stay there forever. She's trying to take him from us. She froze, heart pounding, hands gripping the post of the barn. Each word burned like embers, familiar cruelty rekindled by new targets. Luke stepped beside her, calm as ever. They're here, he said, but you stay close. Nothing they say can touch you here. They might try to hurt you, she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. I'll handle it, he said. Just stay, watch, listen, but don't let their voices carry you away. Eli came to stand behind her, voice low but firm. We'll back you up. Don't worry. Nobody laughs here. Her chest rose and fell with slow breaths, trying to steady the storm of anxiety. For the first time, she felt a fragile courage. She was not alone. Martha, the cook, appeared in the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp. They come. We face them together. That's the rule here. She nodded, gripping her shawl around herself, warmth returning from small acts of solidarity. The ranch, the animals, Luke, Eli, and Martha. All of them formed a cocoon against the cruelty she had endured. The voices from the gate grew louder, threats thinly disguised as accusations. But she felt something new, a small, steady confidence that she could meet them and remain herself. Luke placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. Tomorrow we'll see how they act. Today you've done enough. You've survived. You've learned to breathe again. She glanced at the horses in the yard, their calm presence echoing Luke's words. She felt a strange, quiet pride. First laughter, now a first sense of strength returning. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling but firm. You're welcome, Luke replied. And remember, you're not alone here. Not ever. The sun dipped below the horizon, shadows stretching across the ranch. The distant voices of Willow Creek faded into the night, but she knew they would return. She breathed deeply, letting the cool air fill her lungs. And for the first time in a long while, she felt capable of facing what was to come. Her hands rested on the wooden fence, fingers brushing the grain, and she felt the faint, steady rhythm of the ranch, the animals, and the people who had chosen to see her. Tomorrow, the confrontation would come. But tonight, she had learned to breathe, to trust, and to believe that kindness could exist. Quiet, steadfast, and unwavering. The morning air was sharp and tense, carrying the distant clatter of boots on dry boards. She stepped onto the porch of the ranch, feeling Eli's cautious gaze behind her. They're coming, he whispered, voice low. From town, she swallowed, chest tight, and clutched the shawl around her shoulders. Why now? Rumors travel fast, Eli replied, eyes scanning the approaching dust cloud. Some folks don't take kindly to change. The first two faces emerged, Mrs. Harlan and Mr. Boone, followed by half a dozen townspeople. Voices carrying across the yard. She's taken advantage of Luke, Mrs. Harlan shouted. Everyone knows it. Manipulated him. Mr. Boone barked, pointing a finger at her. You think we don't see? You've stolen goods from the store and made him pity you. She froze, hands tightening on the shawl, feet rooted in straw-strewn mud. I haven't, her voice faltered, swallowed by fear. You hear that? Mrs. Harlan snapped. She can't even speak for herself. Luke stepped forward from the barn, boots crunching over the boards. His jaw was clenched, eyes dark beneath the brim of his hat. Enough, he said firmly, voice carrying like steel. She has done nothing wrong. Leave my land now. The group hesitated, muttering under their breaths. One man, tall and broad, sneered, stepping closer. She's a burden. Too large for her own good. You let her in, and now she's in your way. Luke's expression darkened. I said leave, he repeated, voice sharper, echoing across the yard. Or you'll leave on your own 2 feet, or by mine. This is my property, my rules. Not yours, Mrs. Harlan glared, lips pressing into a thin line. You can't shelter her forever. The town will make you answer. I answer to no one but myself, Luke said. She is welcome here, and your words will not touch her. The man laughed, crude and bitter. Watch out, Boone, he sneered. She'll eat you alive before morning. She'll eat me alive? Luke repeated, jaw tight. Enough. He stepped fully in front of her, hands clenched at his sides. I will not tolerate your cruelty. Leave, now. The townspeople exchanged glances, unease flickering in their eyes as Luke's steady stance left no room for argument. One by one they muttered, muttering curses and threats, retreating down the dirt road with dust rising behind their boots. She sagged slightly, shoulders trembling, relief mingling with exhaustion. But the adrenaline still throbbed through her veins, and she felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Eli rested a hand lightly on her back. You're safe, he said quietly. They're gone. I caused trouble, she whispered, voice small, faltering under the weight of the confrontation. I made him. Luke knelt in front of her, eyes softening. You didn't cause anything, he said gently. You don't deserve their cruelty. None of it is your fault. But they came here because of me, she said, voice breaking. Because of my size, my mistakes, everything about me. He shook his head, steadying her with a firm hand on her shoulder. You have done nothing but be yourself. That's enough to provoke their envy or prejudice, but it does not make you wrong. Do you understand? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, and wrapped her shawl tighter, comforted by his presence. You're safe here, Luke continued. The ranch, these hands, the horses. They are yours too, if you choose. I won't let the town decide your worth. She blinked, voice trembling. I don't know what to say. Then don't, he said. Let your actions speak. Let kindness guide you. That's stronger than their hate, Eli offered a small smile. And we'll back you up, no matter what. You're part of this ranch now. She breathed slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. The barn walls, the smell of hay, the lantern light flickering across the boards, all of it felt like a refuge. For the first time, the weight of shame began to lift, replaced by something fragile but real. A sense of belonging. The man who had sneered at her paused at the edge of the yard, casting one last look. This isn't over, he muttered. It's over for today, Luke said calmly, standing tall. And for as long as I have a say, it stays over. She exhaled, leaning slightly against the barn post, shivering but steadier now. The storm of words and accusations had passed, but the echo of their cruelty lingered in her chest. You see? Luke asked softly. They cannot define you. Only you can. She nodded, pressing the shawl against her chest, feeling the warmth of his reassurance. I want to believe that, she whispered. You will, he said. Slowly, one day at a time. For now, rest. Let the barn walls hold you safe. Her knees gave slightly, and she lowered herself onto a bale of straw, head bowed. Luke remained beside her, steady and silent, until her breathing evened, the storm inside her chest quieting. You did well, he murmured, brave enough to face them, even standing still. She blinked, faint smile trembling across her lips. I've tried, she whispered. That's enough, he said, hand resting lightly on hers. Always enough. Eli stacked a few bales nearby, eyes warm. We'll keep watch tonight, he said. No one gets in without trouble, and even then we'll handle it. She looked around the barn, feeling the small circle of protection, the calm that Luke and the ranch hands provided. Her chest felt a little lighter, the fear a little smaller. I think I can rest now, she said, voice quiet but certain. Good, Luke said softly. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. But tonight you're safe. That's what matters. She sank back, eyes closing as the barn's soft shadows wrapped around her. The storm of accusations had passed, but the echo of the town's hatred promised another confrontation. Still, for the first time, she believed she could face it with someone at her side. Luke's hand lingered for a moment on hers, grounding her, offering calm and courage. Sleep now, he said quietly. They cannot touch you here. And as her eyelids drifted closed, she clung to that small, steady truth, knowing the town would come again, but that she would not face it alone. Torches flickered in the cool evening air, casting long, wavering shadows across the wooden buildings of Willow Creek. She stood near the center of the square, hands clutched over her shawl, heart hammering so loudly she thought the entire town could hear it. "You don't belong here," one voice called, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Lazy! Useless, a burden on Luke and everyone else." Another shouted, spitting each word with deliberate malice. Her knees shook, and she looked down at her boots, dust sticking to damp soles. The shame she had carried for so long pressed against her chest like a heavy stone. She wanted to shrink, to disappear entirely into the earth beneath her feet. The sheriff stepped forward. A tall man with a hard stare softened slightly by age. Now, he said, voice raised. "This is a community concern. Let's hear them out before passing judgment." "They've taken advantage of Luke," Mrs. Harlan cried, stepping closer, pointing a finger. "She thinks she can charm him into giving her everything she wants." "She's lazy," Mr. Boone barked, pushing past the sheriff's arm. "She does nothing for the town." "Nothing!" She flinched at each word, shoulders hunching, eyes blinking back tears. For a moment, she thought she would crumble beneath the weight of their hatred. Then Luke stepped forward, boots crunching over the dry dust of the square, hat in hand, shoulders straight. His calm, steady presence cut through the noise like a knife through fog. "Enough," he said. Voice low but unwavering. The crowd hesitated, murmurs faltering. "I will speak," they turned, startled. Luke's eyes swept over them, seeing every cruel face, every sneer. "You call yourselves a town, yet you spend your days mocking a woman who has done nothing but live her life quietly," he said. His voice rose, firm, carrying. "Every cruel joke, every whispered insult, every moment you humiliated her, she bore it all while you looked away and laughed. She's taken advantage." Mrs. Harlan shouted. "You lie," Luke said sharply. "Every accusation is false. You have stolen moments of peace from her, mocked her size, judged her kindness as weakness. She has never wronged any of you." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some faces flushed, eyes dropping. "Luke," she whispered, voice trembling. Not now," he said softly, not taking his gaze from the crowd. "You will not speak while they cast stones. She is stronger than any of you," Luke continued. "While you sat in judgment, she cared for animals, worked for others, fed those who had less, and showed patience you couldn't imagine. She has more courage than most of you ever will." A few townspeople shifted uneasily, murmuring under their breaths. Mrs. Harlan's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Luke placed his hat over his heart, stance unwavering. "If you want her gone, you'll have to push me out too." The square fell silent. A wind stirred the torches, flames quivering in reflection of the town's uneasy conscience. Even the sheriff looked taken aback, eyes narrowing but not daring to intervene. She's too much," Mr. Boone muttered, voice wavering. "No," Luke said quietly, voice soft but carrying the weight of absolute truth. "She is exactly enough. Exactly right. And if you cannot see that, then you have failed yourselves, not her." She took a shaky breath, staring at him with wide eyes. His words were a shield around her, a voice for all the times she had been too afraid to speak. From the edge of the crowd, a young girl stepped forward. She was no older than 10, dress patched but clean, hair tied in a loose braid. The girl walked slowly, carefully until she reached the edge of the square. "Miss," the girl whispered, voice small but steady. She looked down, blinking in surprise. "Yes?" The girl reached out, fingers brushing hers. I think you're brave," she said softly. "You don't deserve what they said." Her lips trembled, and tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible above the breeze. She bent slightly, allowing the girl to take her hand. The small touch was warm, grounding, and she felt a thread of hope she had not known in years. Luke's gaze softened, and he gave a small nod of approval. "See?" he said quietly, as if to her alone. "The world still has kindness. You only need to notice it," the crowd murmured, tensions softening in places. Some looked ashamed, avoiding her gaze, while others shuffled their feet, unsure what to do with the sudden clarity of truth. Mrs. Harlan's eyes flashed, but she finally turned away, muttering under her breath. Mr. Boone's fists clenched, but his voice faltered, and he said nothing further. The sheriff cleared his throat. Perhaps this meeting has shown more than anyone intended. We'll consider the matter concluded. She blinked, hand still held by the small girl, and felt a trembling laugh slip from her lips. It was light, fragile, but undeniably hers, you see? Luke murmured, voice warm against the cool night air. They cannot define you. Only you can, the girl smiled shyly, squeezing her hand. I want to help, she said softly. You already have, she whispered, squeezing back, heart swelling with gratitude and disbelief. Luke stepped closer, eyes scanning the town once more. Remember this, he said. The world may try to break you, but the right people will lift you up. Protect those moments. They are stronger than any cruelty. The torches flickered, wind carrying whispers of regret from several townspeople, some still unsure of their own judgments. But the weight pressing against her chest had lifted, replaced by a cautious, budding confidence. Eli moved to stand beside Luke, offering quiet support. They'll be talking tonight, he said. But you've faced it, and you stood your ground. That counts. She nodded, squeezing the young girl's hand once more. I think I can stand, she whispered, voice steadier. With help. Luke smiled faintly, tipping his hat. Not just with help. With courage you've always had, even when no one noticed. Tonight, you are seen. The crowd remained, watching silently, the firelight reflecting off a few reddened faces. A lesson had been delivered, not just to them, but to the girl who had long believed the world wanted her gone. As the night wind brushed through the square, carrying dust and the faint smell of hay from the outskirts, she stood taller, shoulders loosening for the first time in years. She had survived their cruelty, and for the first time she felt that maybe the world could be different. The young girl squeezed her hand again. Stay, she whispered. Please don't go. She swallowed hard, feeling warmth in her chest she had never allowed herself to feel before. I won't, she promised softly. Luke's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, grounding her in the quiet strength of the moment. They may speak, he said, voice low, but they cannot undo what you've earned tonight. Remember that. She exhaled, letting the tension leave her body, and looked around the square once more. For the first time, she felt she belonged. Not because the town accepted her, but because she had found someone who saw her worth, and a small friend who reminded her that courage was contagious. The morning sun burned through the dusty haze of Willow Creek as she stood near the town square, hands trembling around the shawl draped over her shoulders. The young girl from the previous night stepped forward first, eyes downcast. Miss, the girl whispered, voice small. I laughed at you before, because everyone else did. Her chest tightened, and she blinked rapidly, unsure how to respond. Why would you? She asked softly, voice wavering. The girl's fingers twisted nervously. I didn't understand. I didn't know. I just followed them. She swallowed hard, feeling a strange lump in her throat. You don't have to. You're young, she murmured, the words catching in her own voice. I should have known better, the girl said, tears welling. I'm sorry, I really am. Her lips trembled, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. She had spent so long expecting cruelty that hearing this quiet apology felt like sunlight through storm clouds. Thank you, she whispered, voice low, almost a prayer. The girl's mother stepped forward next, a woman in a worn dress, with worry etched in every line of her face. She began, voice shaking. I thought it was harmless teasing, but I see now I was wrong. I'm sorry. Her breath caught. She had faced mockery, insults, and scorn for so many years, and yet here were people, finally, admitting they had erred. Tears rolled down her cheeks, hot and unexpected, and she raised her hands to wipe them away hastily. Thank you, she said, voice firm but trembling. I don't need anyone to love me, but I don't deserve cruelty. A few townspeople shifted uneasily, eyes meeting hers in quiet shame. We didn't see it, one man muttered. We thought it was funny. Luke stepped closer, standing beside her, one hand brushing lightly against her back in reassurance. They speak now, he said softly, voice carrying only to her. But that doesn't make the past right. Still, it shows change is possible. Another woman, hands clenched around a basket of vegetables, took a hesitant step forward. I mocked you too, she admitted, voice barely audible. I didn't understand. I see that now. She felt the weight in her chest lighten slightly with each confession. She blinked rapidly, trying to steady her breathing. Thank you, she said again. Each word felt strange and foreign, but sincere. Even the sheriff, standing near the edge of the square, cleared his throat and spoke with the authority of his office. This ends now, he said, voice firm. She has every right to remain in Willow Creek without fear of harassment or ridicule. Let that be known. The town must honor her dignity or face consequences. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some looked away, faces red with guilt. Others remained silent, processing the truth. She watched quietly, her hands folded in front of her, chest tightening with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Luke rested a hand gently on her back, grounding her. You did nothing to deserve the life you endured, he said quietly, voice soft but strong. None of this was your fault. She blinked, overwhelmed by the words. I never thought anyone would say that, she murmured, voice shaking with emotion. Never. Eli, standing nearby, nodded with a quiet smile. They'll learn eventually. People can change, sometimes slowly. Today is proof. Her gaze drifted to the young girl, who had taken a hesitant step backward, looking down at her boots. I'll try to do better, the girl whispered. She nodded, tears still streaming, and pressed the small girl's hand briefly. That's all anyone can do, she said gently. Try to do better. A few more townspeople stepped forward, each admitting small wrongs, each voice hesitant and trembling. We judged too quickly, one man said. We didn't know. We were cruel. Every laugh, every word, every look meant more than we realized, another whispered. She lifted her chin, heart swelling with a strange warmth, the beginnings of something she had never allowed herself. Dignity. For years, she had bent, under the weight of their scorn, but now, standing here, she felt the possibility of standing tall. Luke's voice broke through the soft murmurs of the town. You see, he said quietly, not to the crowd, but to her alone. They speak truth now, but your worth has never depended on them noticing. She let out a slow breath, eyes scanning the faces of the town. Some still avoided her gaze, some whispered quietly, but none dared speak harshly. For the first time, she felt the town's energy shift. It was no longer a storm pressing in around her. It was quiet, cautious, and respectful. The sheriff clapped his hands once, firmly, drawing everyone's attention. Meeting adjourned. Let her live in peace, and let us learn from our own errors. She has every right to stay here, and the law will protect that right. A hush fell over the square. People began to disperse, moving slowly along dusty streets. Some whispering apologies, some heads bowed in shame, others just walking away quietly, humbled by what they had witnessed. She remained still for a moment, clutching the shawl to her chest, letting the warmth seep in. Luke's hand remained lightly on her back. You have nothing to apologize for, he said softly. The cruelty was never yours to carry. She closed her eyes briefly, savoring the moment. I don't know what to do now, she whispered, voice soft but steady. I have to decide where I want my future to be. Luke nodded. Wherever you choose, he said. But remember, the strength you showed here today is yours. It cannot be taken, even by the harshest town. She opened her eyes, scanning the quiet streets of Willow Creek. The familiar dust, the warm light of morning reflecting off wooden boards, the soft rustle of the wind through the alleyways, all of it felt different now. Less oppressive, more welcoming. I think I want to stay, she murmured, finally allowing herself to believe it. Here, with people who are learning. And with you, Luke. At the ranch. Luke smiled faintly, tipping his hat. Then stay. Make your life here as you see fit, not because the town allows it, but because you've earned it. The young girl, watching her from a few steps away, smiled shyly, then ran ahead to fetch water for the animals, the simple gesture of kindness echoing the morning's change. She inhaled deeply, letting the smell of dust and hay fill her lungs, heart pounding but lighter than it had in years. Today, the world had admitted its wrongs, and for the first time, she felt the faint glow of hope. Bright enough to guide her steps forward, Luke remained at her side, hand brushing hers once more. "You did well," he said softly, "stronger than they ever imagined." She nodded, voice trembling with emotion. I think I finally understand what it means to be worth more than their cruelty." The town square, once filled with anger and mockery, now held quiet reflection. And for her it held something even more important. The beginning of a life defined by her own dignity and the knowledge that kindness, unexpected, steady, and true, could change even the harshest hearts.